Breakdown of warning signs that show up before every major market crash and the bubbles Canadians should actually be worried about right now. There's a moment that happens right before every major financial crash. Investors get overconfident, families get blindsided, and right now, the same psychology driving the AI boom and the stock market frenzy is quietly building a bubble inside Canadian households. A bubble that could hit harder than any dip in your investment account because the biggest bubble today isn't Nvidia or OpenAI or tech valuations, it's household debt, mortgage renewals, and cash flow pressure reaching levels we've never seen in Canada. I'm seeing families with strong incomes who are stretched to the edge. One rate change, one slow economy, one job hiccup, and their entire financial plan collapses. So today we're breaking down what's really happening, why everyone is watching the wrong bubble, and how to protect your home and your future before the pressure shows up at your front door. Let's go. So most people think a bubble is simply prices going up too fast. That's part of it, but it's not the core of it. A bubble forms when story beats math. A bubble forms when emotion overrides logic. And to understand what's happening today, we need to look at patterns from the past. Let's start with the dot-com bubble. In the late 90s, the internet was the shiny new thing. Everyone believed it would change the world overnight. And they weren't wrong, right? Like the internet did change the world, but investors didn't care about profits, cash flow, or fundamentals. They just wanted to be part of the next big thing. People were buying shares in companies that didn't even have revenue yet. It was pure speculation dressed up as innovation. Cisco, the biggest tech darling of that time, traded at 472 times earnings. Investors weren't buying Cisco, they were buying the idea of Cisco. And when reality didn't match the hype, the NASDAQ fell almost 80%. Many companies disappeared overnight. People lost years of savings, not because the tech was fake, but because the expectations were. That's the first lesson about bubbles. The story becomes more powerful than the truth. Now let's jump to the Japanese everything bubble in the late 80s. This was one of the wildest financial moments in history long before my time. The stock market tripled in a few years. Real estate prices skyrocketed so high that 1 square mile of land in Tokyo was said to be worth more than the entire state of California. People believed Japan would dominate the global economy forever. It was optimism without limits. And when it snapped, everything fell. The market dropped 80%. Real estate collapsed, spending froze, and Japan entered decades of stagnation. 40 years later, they're still recovering. That's the second lesson of bubbles. They don't just pop, they drag economies with them. Let's talk the '08 housing bubble. This one hits close to home because a lot of Canadians think it can happen here, but the cause wasn't home prices. It wasn't even bad mortgages. It was psychology. People believed real estate could never go down. They believed they were safe because everyone else is doing it. Why wouldn't I? Banks loosened their standards. Consumers stretched their budgets. People built their lives on the assumption that the trend would continue. Then the trend reversed like everything. Millions lost their homes because they built their financial plans on hope instead of strategy. That's the third lesson here. A bubble doesn't require a crash, just a shift in confidence. So now let's pull this into what's happening today. The AI boom is showing early stage bubble behavior. Massive, massive, massive optimism. Circular money, companies being valued on potential, not performance. Everyone's piling in because they don't want to miss out. It's that classic FOMO, bubble psychology, because that's just what people do. And here's the difference. Unlike 2001, the real risk today isn't limited to investors. The real risk today is tied to household balance sheets because when you zoom out, you realize something very uncomfortable. At least I see it. Canada is living in its own version of a bubble, but ours isn't about stock prices. Ours is about debt, renewals, and affordability. We actually in Canada have the highest household debt to income ratio inside of the G7. We have record levels of HELOC usage. We have millions of mortgages renewing at much higher rates, some 4 times higher. We have lines of credit being used for everyday expenses, and we have a generation of homeowners who have never experienced real interest rate risk. That's a bubble, not in price, in assumptions. And that's how every bubble forms. People assume the present will continue. People assume nothing major will change. And people assume that they'll adjust when the time comes. But financial pressure, it doesn't arrive politely. It shows up suddenly, catches you with your pants down, and it exposes every weak spot at once. So let's talk about the psychology behind why people get trapped in these so-called bubbles. There's a predictable pattern investors follow and households follow it, the exact same pattern. The first stage is optimism. People say the economy is strong or everything feels normal, blah, blah, blah. Borrowing feels comfortable, spending feels justified, nothing feels dangerous. The second stage is excitement. This is when gains look easy, house prices rise, investments growing, income stable. People start to believe that they're good with money simply because nothing has gone wrong. Then comes euphoria. This is where bubbles form. This is where people ignore risk. This time it's different, I swear. Rates will come back down. We can afford it. It always works out. Everyone feels smarter than they actually are, and that's a problem. Then comes the first dip, a small rate increase. Markets stall. Payments rise. People get uncomfortable, but not alarmed. Then we hit denial. This is the dangerous part. People hope things will reverse. They extend their lines of credit. They make minimum payments. They maintain their lifestyle while margins get thinner and thinner. This is where households quietly slip into trouble. Then reality hits. This is the fear stage. Budgets, they tighten, spending drops, stress rises, and people finally ask for help, but their options, they're limited. And finally comes capitulation. This is where people make drastic decisions because the small decisions were ignored far too long ago. And this psychological shift is the same in the cycle whether you're buying tech stocks in 2000, condos in '08, or groceries on a maxed out line of credit in 2025. The emotion is identical, the math identical, and the consequences are identical. The only difference is scale. And here's why this matters to you as a Canadian homeowner. You don't need a crash for this bubble to hurt you. You don't need AI to collapse. You don't need the stock market to melt down. All it takes is one more year of higher rates. All it takes is slower wage growth. All it takes is renewal you aren't prepared for. That's why I keep saying the biggest bubble today is the bubble inside household budgets. So how do you protect yourself? Let me give you the same framework that I walk through with my clients every single day. First, I encourage you to reduce risk where you can feel it. That means lowering monthly obligations, restructuring some debt, and freeing up breathing room because cash flow is oxygen and most households are holding their breath. Secondly, build some resilience into your mortgage, not just your portfolio. People worry all the time about markets dropping, but you know what causes far more damage, at least what I see, is a mortgage payment you can't manage. Your mortgage structure should protect you, not expose you. Third, stop relying on when rates drop. That's not a strategy. That's a freaking wish, and wishes don't cover $600 payment increases. Fourth, diversify your life, not just your investments. Don't let your income, your debt, and your home all depend on the same economic weather. Spread out your risk, build some buffers, create options, and finally, stay consistent. Don't chase the highs, don't panic in the lows. Don't build your financial life on feelings. Simple. Build it on math because here's the truth. We cannot predict bubbles. We can only prepare for them. And the households that prepare will not just survive uncertain times, they'll come out stronger, wealthier, and more secure on the other side. And once you're done here, check out last week's episode where I talked about the Bank of Canada's announcement and what it really means for the Canadian housing market. I'll see you there.